I'd like to begin the meeting, please, if everyone can get seated. And I'm going to ask the town clerk to do the roll call. It's not working. Jerry, we may have a microphone problem up here. Here.
Check 1, 2.
Joe DiMartino. Art Hogg. Here. Amy Mezzoff. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Matt Ambrose. Here. Josh Garskoff. Here. Chris McAleese. Here. Ruth Snay. Here. Ann Stamler. Here. Chris Brogan. Here. Lenora Campbell. Here. Julie Gottlieb. Here. Sheila Marmion. Here. Jay Wolk. Here. Jen Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hoskins. Eric Newman. Here. Mark Patton. Hal Schwartz. Here. Kathy Braun. Here. Dana Carey. Here. Alan Marks. Here. Tom McCarthy. Here. Jeff Stopa. Here. Bill D'Amica. Here. Joe Fellner. Ellen Jacob. Nick Marabli. Carol Contrilli. Here. Chuck Abercrombie. Lee Hannum. Here. Ken Lee. Here. Bruce Ryan. Here. Carol Way. Here.
How many do we have? Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Richard White and Joseph Michelangelo to please come up to the front of the room. The Department of Public Works, as we all know, consists of 5 major divisions: administration, engineering, public works operation, water pollution control, and solid waste and recycling. It employs 113 people with a combined operating budget of $25.5 million. The department provides the following services: engineering, construction management, wastewater treatment and composting, solid waste and recycling, highway and drainage maintenance, care of the town's public trees, maintenance of parks, ball fields, beaches, and marinas, and maintenance of all town buildings except the Board of Ed Energy Management. As you know, Rich White retired from his position as the town's Director of Public Works last month. And I thought it would be appropriate if the RTM were to formally acknowledge and thank him for his years of service and for the close working relationship he's had with this body. Rich started with the town in 1985, 27 years ago, with a position called Chief Operating Engineer, where his main responsibility was operation of the town's wastewater treatment plant. As he has joked, he has worked his way up the pipe. Not my joke. I wish I could take credit for it. He was appointed by Jackie Durrell as the Director of Public Works in 1993 and subsequently served as 19 years as Director. Rich has also made his mark in town by being involved and responsible for over $100 million of town construction projects, including treatment plant upgrade and expansion, compost facility construction, ball field construction, bridge replacements, road and flood control projects, Penfield Pavilion, and energy reduction projects. But I think one of the other very distinctive traits that Rich possesses and exhibited in all of his interactions with the RTM, and I can only assume with others in his life, is his laid-back and unflappable style and approach to issues. He is even-keeled and always took time to present and explain the facts and information calmly, patiently, and thoroughly. Rich has been a consummate professional and also a helpful and willing participant in discussions, dialogues, and debate of any town project that has been this body's ever considered. We will miss Rich, but it is comforting to know he will still be close by in case his expertise is ever needed again in the future. It is no surprise that someone with as tranquil of a temperament as Rich has also a great passion for sailing. Clearly something that keeps someone as down to earth as you are, Rich. So thank you again, Rich, for all your work and dedication to this town. And as Rich moves on, we now welcome Joseph Michelangelo, whom we've seen here at our meeting earlier, as our next Public Works Director and current Public Works Director. Joe is a licensed professional engineer and holds bachelor's degrees in civil engineering and electrical engineering from the University of New Haven and a master's degree in environmental management from Yale. Joe has been employed by Connecticut municipalities for the past 25 years. He served for the last 10 years with the town of Cheshire, the last 9 as the Director of Public Works and Town Engineer. Prior to going to Cheshire, he was the Director of Public Works and Town Engineer for the town of Oxford for nearly 4 years. Earlier in his career, he also served as the Deputy Director of Public Works for the town of Monroe and as the Assistant City Engineer for the City of Shelton. Among his major accomplishments at Cheshire include increasing the town's pavement program, the capping of the former town landfill, the design of upgrades to facilities at the wastewater treatment plant, and rehabilitation of most of the sanitary sewer pump stations, improving the town's sidewalk network and streetscape. He's also worked with town and state officials to lay the groundwork for the future expansion of the Farmington Canal Linear Trail. Mr. Michelangelo is a lifelong Connecticut resident and lives in Branford with his wife, Michelle, and their 3 daughters. Welcome, Joe, and we look forward to working with you on many fronts over the coming years. Okay, we're going to have you guys lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flags of the United States of America and to the republics for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just stay standing for a moment of silence, and as we do, I ask you to keep in your thoughts Superintendent Dave Title and his family, as his father, Mr. Samuel Hartman Title, passed away last week. Further, please keep in your thoughts Adam Carvalho and his family. Adam was a second-grade student at Stratfield Elementary School who passed away of cancer last week. I had read a touching piece in his obituary that described how Lieutenant Mark Harry of Station Number 3 brought a pump truck from his station along with a ladder truck from Station Number 2 to Adam's house in the image of a small boy assertively directing 6 firefighters, 2 trucks, 1 hose, and a fully extended ladder in his pajamas will not soon be forgotten. It is never anything anybody wants to happen, and we hope his family stays strong. Thank you. Absolutely.
I know. I appreciate the kind words from Jeff and the recognition. I've been wearing my hair shorter to make the transition a little smoother for people. The other thing I want to I just express my gratitude for having had a great career with the town for 27 years. It's really been a lot of fun. And people that know my department know that there are a lot of very talented and conscientious people that work in that department. And a main part of my job is to stay out of their way, let them do what they're good at, and just help them out when I can. And the other thing I wanted to just express my respect over the years for the RTM, the different members that I've worked with, and all the other boards and commissions that put in a lot of time to make this town what it is, and work in our democratic process, which is cumbersome at time, but I think the best one in terms of transparency and making the right decisions. So thank you very much.
Two quick housekeeping items. The next RTM meeting will take place on Monday, November 26th at this location. The Monday committee meetings, and that's after Thanksgiving, the Monday committee meetings will still take place on Monday, November 19, while the Ed and Rec and Public Health and Safety committees will meet on Tuesday, November 20th, instead of Wednesday. These meetings will take place at the new Penfield Pavilion, everybody. Further, at the next RTM meeting in November, which is an organizational meeting, the body will elect a moderator for the second year of this present term. While I will likely run again, I certainly invite anyone else to run for this position. And I invite you, I ask you, plead to you. Item number 2, to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular monthly meeting held on September 24th, 2012. Are there any proposed amendments or revisions to any of these minutes from the body? Representative Dean.
Thank you. Representative Dean, District 4. I just wanted to make a slight motion to amend on item 10 of last month. Just after Representative Garskoff had made a comment and before Mr. Barnhart had answered a question, I actually asked the question that he answered, and I asked the likelihood of receiving the grant money, and if received, would any additional taxpayer dollars be used? I do have this written down for you to give to you. And after Mr. Barnhart had answered, I responded with that I would support this item for the betterment of Southport. Well, that's the abbreviated version.
Okay, and we will put that in. I think you had mentioned on page 5 of the minutes, under item 10,
Right,
before and after that last statement about Mr. Barnhart reiterated.
exactly.
Right, okay. So we're just going to make a motion to add, and you'll get this exact language here, Ann and Betsy. Yeah. Does anyone want that repeated? What exactly she's inserting in the minutes? Do you want to, just, you know what, why don't you do this, just to make, actually, why don't you come over here for a moment? Because what we'll do is we'll just read exactly how it will read, with this being the insert. So why don't you read your first statement, and then this, and then that. So it's going to read this way.
So after Josh Garskoff, District 5, it'll read, Representative Dean asked likelihood, is everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay. Representative Dean, District 4, asked likelihood of receiving the grant money, and if received, would any additional taxpayer dollars be used? Mr. Barnhart answered the question at that point. Afterwards, I added that I would support this item for the betterment of Southport. Do you need this?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, great.
Do I have a second on that? Representative Schwartz, any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Becker, Representative McCullough. So that amendment passes. Now we just have to go back to the full meeting minutes. I've got your minutes here, by the way. We're back to a motion to approve the minutes as they are now amended. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Yes, Representative Richmond, second, Representative Hochberg. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Becker, Representative Sundman, Representative Meyer. The minutes pass. Next is the consent calendar. This month there are no items on consent since, yes, I'm calling you out, Public Works did not have a quorum. Item number 3 is to hear an update on the Fairfield Metro Center, and I believe Mr. Mark Barnhart is here. You're welcome to take this podium if that would be easier. Okay.
There's two different handouts being provided. Hello again. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM. My name is Mark Barnhart. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development for the town. I've been asked to provide an update with regard to the Fairfield Metro Center and intersection improvement projects. You should be receiving two separate handouts. One is a copy of the slides that I'll be going over this evening. And second, there is should be a 4-page handout with a cover sheet entitled Combined Project Expense Summary, Actual through 9/30/2012 and Projected, along with expense detail, and as requested, a breakdown of legal expenses by vendor through 9/30/2012. Oh. Does everyone have it?
There are extras here for members of the public if they want it.
Yeah, I made 75 copies, so there should be plenty. So again, you should have two handouts. One is a series of slides, starting with Fairfield Metro Center and intersection improvements, project status update as of September 30th, 2012. There are 4 pages. And secondly, there's another 4-page handout with a expense summary and detail behind it. So I will go through the slides this evening and hopefully not take too long, and then be prepared to respond to any questions you may have. I guess just overall, I would characterize the project status at this point. The work has largely been completed with the exception of a few punch list items which should be addressed within the next few weeks. Let me go through the expense side of the ledger, so to speak, starting with second page, slide number 3. First, we're looking at the Fairfield Metro Center expense summary. As you can see, expended to date totals $40.5 million. And construction work is fully paid out. The contractor has been paid for all work performed to date. There is no remaining work items other than, as I said, some remedial landscape work that constitutes punch list items for which he's already been paid. We're in the paperwork phase, if you, just as a general word for it, essentially finishing up our project documentation in preparation for record submittal to the district, Department of Transportation. They have commenced their review, but there's a much more intensive review and audit that will be forthcoming in the weeks and months to come. So there is inspection and engineering costs associated with that. We're looking at about $200,000 to $300,000 left to spend, with a total projected cost of about $40.8 for that project. With respect to the intersection improvement project, again, this project has been completed for some time. We're still in the paperwork phase, if you will, completing project documentation to the satisfaction of the DOT. DOT has conducted their initial review of the project records and provided in excess of, I believe, 70 comments, which need to be addressed by our construction administration and inspection firm. There's a cost associated with that work, what's remaining. We spent about $4.2 million to date. We have a little less than 100,000, quite a bit less than 100,000 left to go, for a total projected cost of about 4.3. If we look at the two projects combined, we have expended, this is on slide 5, page 3, we've expended $44.7 million to date. We have about another $400,000. We project another $400,000 left to go, again associated largely with engineering, inspection, construction administration cost, for a total projected cost combined of $45.1 million within the $45.3 budget that we have. Looking at revenues, turning to slide 7, we had provided some time ago, back I believe as part of our April report, a slide that broke down revenues by source and project. That has been updated to reflect our current projected cost of $45.1 million. So you can see the breakdown by source and the two different projects, Fairfield Metro Center versus the intersection project. Looking at the status of collections to date in terms of revenues to finance these improvements, we've received about $36.8 million to date. We expect to receive an additional $8.3 million through project completion, totaling for $45.1 million. The bulk of the federal dollars that are left relate to the intersection improvement project. Most of the state DOT funds, the $2 million remaining, relate back to the Fairfield Metro Center. There's a small portion that's related to a match associated with the intersection project. We have yet to apply for the release of the conservation bond, which is another $800,000. That will come as a result of our submitting project documentations through the Inland Wetlands Commission, which would indicate compliance with the terms of the permit, after which then we will be able to make an application for release of the bond. And that, I believe, concludes my summary. I'd be happy to respond to questions at this time.
We'll probably keep you up here. Yeah, we're going to open this up to any follow-up questions to that presentation, Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Thanks for the presentation. I like it. I'd like to... Is that the microphone? Okay. In the, I believe it was in the April meeting or last time, or maybe it was in January, the last big grant we were looking at was anywhere from $2 to $4 million. I can't remember it, Mr. Tetro. It came up when we approved the 7.5. There was a grant. Yeah, is that the, is there an amount on here that represents that? The additional expected, is that the $2 million?
It's a portion of, actually we received a portion of those funds already. You recall originally the state had pledged $19.1 million toward costs associated with Fairfield Metro, and then as a result of going back to the state, we had requested additional funding based on increased cost, and they had committed to providing up to $3 million in connection with improvements subsequent to August to complete the roadway and parking lot improvements. That's an excellent point I wanted to make, which is that commitment was up to $3 million based on documented costs associated with the parking lot and roadway to complete that work after August. We anticipate, as does the state, that our actual documenting cost in connection with that effort will yield approximately $2.6 million toward the project, so that's what we'll be able to actually document in the way of hard costs that will be subject to reimbursement. And that is reflected in the additional expected funds that are shown on the state DOT column.
Okay, so out of the $3 million, you're expecting 2.6.
Correct, 2.6.
2.6.
Right.
Okay, great. And another thing, I don't know if this is the time or place to bring it up, but I know there was an issue with Guerrera. There was something filed in Town Hall. I just heard Mr. Barnhart say that everyone's been paid. Does that mean we are released from that claim?
There were 2 lawsuits filed, I think is what you're referring to last spring.
Yeah.
Okay, one had to do with the intersection improvements. It was for, and forgive me if you're using approximate numbers, about $250,000, kind of that magnitude. All the issues relating to that have been agreed to. The lawsuit technically hasn't been withdrawn today because we're waiting for paperwork from Guerrera, things like a waiver of liens from their subcontractors, that type of thing, that we need to get in before we release the funds to them for their retainage. So that we're basically, we know the steps we're going through. They just need to get us some documentation so we can check them off our list, and we'll hand them the check, and we'll be done with that. There was a second lawsuit. There was approximately, forgive me, $5 million in change. We have also settled that. There were a number of things within that that kind of went away, but one of the issues that we had to sit down, we were negotiating this last January and February at the time the lawsuit was filed. And they kind of filed it out of sequence. They're supposed to go to mediation first. We eventually did go to mediation. But the gist of it is this. As you remember, many of the quantities that were quoted were somewhat lower than the actual ones. So let me take an example for that. In one case, we had an estimated quantity of 8,000 cubic yards. The actual number was closer to 66,000 cubic yards. For any item where we're 25% or more over, the contractor or the customer, I guess in this case, are allowed to go back and renegotiate the unit price. So for that item, the 8,000 cubic yards that were originally bid would be done at the contract price. The next 25%, or up to 10,000, would be done at the contract price. However, the 56,000 cubic yards in excess of that would be potentially subject to renegotiation. We were in the process of doing that with Guerrera when they filed the suit. We continued to do that. We have sorted out those overages and come to an agreement on what any additional unit cost numbers there'd be, though those costs and that dollar amount is comprehended within the numbers you have in front of you.
Okay, so you've accounted for settling these two.
It came to approximately, instead of the $5 million, it came to about $500,000 in upcharges based on what those
And
unit
you've
costs
got
were.
those included in the expenses.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, just in case anybody checks, because I think somebody had last time, that lawsuit has not been withdrawn yet. We haven't paid our retainage yet until we get the paperwork and the documentation saying there's the subcontract liens and have been waived, that I think there's some easement documentation, a few other items within the contract that we need, then we'll hand over the retainage, we'll hand that over, and I'll also accept a withdrawal of the lawsuit at that time. So as much as it's still in place, everything's been agreed to, and the mediator/judge helped us sort that out.
Great, thank you for that. I guess while you're up there, in last August or whenever, when we approved the second bond for, it was $7.5 million, right?
Correct.
Okay, so out of that number, it looks like on this revenue summary, you're anticipating we're going to use $4.4 million of that. Is that how I can interpret the column under revenue summary? We have the town received to date the $6 million, which was the one from years ago, and it looks like additional expected is the 4.4 out of the 7.5?
Yeah, let me just confirm with Mark. Is that what we have? That's actually, take that.
Yes, that would be an accurate interpretation of these numbers, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other members? Representative Braun? Yeah, make sure you have all your stuff.
To either Mr. Barnhart or Mr. Tetro. I'm trying to understand these numbers. Is this mic on? I can't tell. But, okay. My understanding is, this is the way I'm looking at it, the 9.9 million shown under FMC for the town side probably includes the 6 million original bond from 2003 or so, and then the 7.5 million from 2011 for the overruns. minus the amount we're getting from the state of about under 3 million. Is that why it's 9.9 instead of 13 million? Is that how that calculation is done? I'm trying to figure out all the money the town has put in. Initially, we bonded 6 million, and then we bonded 7.5 million. That's all we've ever bonded, to my knowledge, correct?
We have the authority to bond that much, correct?
Okay. So we're getting 2.6 million back from the state. So this revenue, was the revenue from the town, which would have been 13.5 million, was that reduced by the 2.5 million to get to the essentially 9.9 or 10 million? Like, is that offset in there from the state?
The numbers here reflect an additional commitment of approximately $2.6 million from the state to cover cost overruns in association with the Fairfield Metro Center project.
Which in the...
And in addition to that, we do see that we'll end up spending a little bit less than what we had initially projected, which led to the authorization. So the combined effect of those two things reduces the amount of town funds needed for the project.
Would, as of last August, when we bonded the extra money, it could have been 13.5 million, but instead it's going to be 9.9 million after coming in a little under, as well as getting the state money. Is that what the 9.9?
We also need to cover our costs connected with the intersection project. So
I'm just talking about the FMC portion.
for the train station, yes, we're projecting about 9.9 out of the
Okay,
appropriation.
and that's after the offset from the state state money. Thank you. I have a couple other questions. Sorry. This through you to, I guess, Mr. Tetro. I'm inquiring about the status of this change to residential. My understanding is they put something in early January, and I'm wondering why you didn't tell us that when you gave us our last Metro Center update, which was January 23rd, because this is something that many, many constituents are very, very concerned about, that there's been a revision proposed. It has since been withdrawn, but my understanding is the developer is very, very interested in actually doing this 200-unit residential development as opposed to the commercial development that everybody was promised. And I even saw somebody show up at a hearing who said he was on the zoning board and he was told there would never, ever, ever be any residential. So my question to you is, what is the status? Are you having meetings with BlackRock Realty? Is it going to come back? I know it was withdrawn from the Conservation Commission, I believe because of problems on the ground, but, you know, the sewer's backing up or something like that. But what is going on with that?
Okay. Just to address your first question,
Yeah.
in terms of when these projects come before us, they come before the boards, commission, conservation rather, zoning, building, long before they ever come across the first selectman's desk. So as much as Mr. Whittick had mentioned things like that, he's mentioned a lot of things, as this group is aware of. So in terms of the exact status, frankly, until it's official, I'm not going to come back here and quote to this body and report on a rumor. And at the time, when I'm giving updates on the Metro Center, it's about the construction project at hand and where we stand with the costs. As you pointed out, the item at this point is withdrawn. There are issues with sewer system capacity, which is one of the issues, and I think that in the short term it was drawn until that can be dealt with. I don't know if there are other issues that the Conservation Commission might address or not with respect to that. I believe the process from there is that it would have to go to get the sewer capacity issue addressed, and then at some point it would go before zoning. In order for that project to be built, zoning would have to approve a zone change. As things stand, it does not qualify. It does not qualify. So unless zoning approves a zone change, then that project can be considered. But until there's a zone change, that project is not subject to consideration and cannot be built on the site, as it's been explained to me. Does that help?
Yes, and I hope you will update us if there are further discussions about coming back with that, because my understanding is, based on an article in the paper recently, they're going around trying to get people to agree to support changing it to residential, and that's a big concern for a lot of people because of the net tax burden that results on the budget.
Yeah, Mr. Whittick hasn't come back to me since I told him how I felt about it.
That's great. A couple other points. I note on your one of these cost expense sheets that was handed out, the legal fees, $482,000. Just by my crude calculation, I'd say about three-quarters of that is based on, and this is before your term, project mismanagement, legal opinions based on project mismanagement, and trying to keep Mr. Stanky off the site for the last 5 years. My question is, do we have itemized bills? I know when I represent corporations, if they think my bill is too high, they go down and look at the itemizations. Do we have a detailed itemized bill for each of these law firms? And if so, can we get a copy of them?
Yes and yes. It's a lot of details going back over, I think, approximately 10 years. So is there any one firm you'd care for, or do you want us to
Well, the town
provide all
attorney,
those?
Mr. Saxel, because he was found by McCarter and English to have misled the town and misled Mr. Flato into signing the 2010 agreements that exposed us to unlimited cost overruns, which actually did cost us quite a few million extra dollars. I would like to know what his bill is on an itemized basis, certainly.
Okay, you know it in gross, and you want to see the details
I
also.
sure would. As well as, now, I'd also like to have the itemized bills from Redness and Mead and Gary Weddle. Those are two consultants that the Superior Court and the Supreme Court have ruled were hired and appointed illegally, and their appointments are null and void. I would really like to see their itemized bills as well. Is that
That's
possible?
fine.
Okay.
It certainly is.
Can't
There's
be
just,
too hard. I'm sure they submitted bills.
well, actually, no, it's just the labor going back through and making copies of those.
Okay.
So if you'd like to come down and review the files, that would save the town money.
Great.
If you want us, you wouldn't mind doing that?
I'll go down and look at it, sure.
That would save the town some money and time and effort,
No
especially as we move into budget season with our financial department both finishing up the year-end audit as well as preparing for the budget. So if you wouldn't mind helping out with that, that
Sure.
would be super.
Always willing to help save money. My last question is regarding, two more actually. The value of the land or the value of the project. And I know I asked this before when all these cost overruns came up. There's got to be some recourse against BlackRock Realty. From the way I look at it, they didn't do the work. The state and the town picked up the tab to the tune of around $25 million extra dollars that had to be put in. And now, someone gave me a copy of a deposition of one of the principals of BlackRock Realty, where they testified under oath in 2009 that the BlackRock Realty project is worth $77 million. So my question is, can't we do anything? Can we do anything? This contract, in my opinion, was breached, not by us, by them.
Yeah.
And here we are bending over backwards. Now they're trying to change it. Our constituents and our taxpayers probably would be interested in knowing if we clean up their land, we built the stuff they were supposed to build, and now their stuff is their commercial stuff, which they have yet to do, has been appraised or assessed by the owner of our private partner at $77 million. What can we do? Can anybody look into that?
If you're talking about, do we have any recourse against BlackRock?
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money just about a year ago going back through asking just that question. We said, can we get out of the contract? Can we get any money from BlackRock? Are they in breach of the contract anywhere? What are our options? How do we go through? We asked all that. We spent a lot of good money on attorneys to do that. If you're asking us to go spend that money again to get a second opinion?
Well, I guess at minimum I'm asking us to make no more concessions or accommodations, because that's one reason we got into this debacle to begin with. Too many concessions and accommodations, such
Okay.
as firing an entire department from the project.
Yeah.
Did you answer that question? 'Cause we're gonna-
I think so.
Yeah, he did.
Is there one other
I made my point. One last question. Regarding the $800,000 conservation bond, that cannot be released, and I'm sure Attorney Lesser will back me up, until the Conservation Commission, now with the assistance of our own Conservation Department, has determined that all the wetlands issues on that site are complete and compliant. That cannot be done for a while because the Conservation Department is in the process of getting caught up on 5 years of not even having a file to look at, trying to complete the file, trying to figure out what was done and what wasn't done. And there are problems on the site. There's an exposed plastic membrane, which is supposed to be covered with clean fill, and there's erosion problems, and then there's the sewer backup. So I don't know when that will happen, but my understanding is we're not going to get the $800,000, anytime soon.
Let's just hope our Conservation Commission moves quicker than DOT.
That might be hard since the file is fragmented, but thank you.
You haven't seen DOT yet.
On that note, Representative Lee.
Representative Lee, District 10. I have a short question. I'm looking at the list of legal fees here, which is $442,000, I believe. How How much of that was spent on the investigation as opposed to building? Is that a number that's easy to grasp out of that pile?
Just speak more loudly into the mic.
Maybe I'll just speak more loudly.
Just,
The question was, I'm looking at the $442,000.
you got to use the mic. You got to just speak into the mic.
Can you hear
Give it our best shot.
Can you hear this thing? Okay. The question that I'm just curious. A certain amount of this was spent on the construction project itself. Then there was a lot of investigation of the construction project. Do we have, like, can we say 50% of it went one way and 50% went the other? But I'm referring specifically to the I think McCarter and English, didn't they do the, I know that they did the investigation part or the analysis part.
Yeah, you're asking about the investigation. I'm not quite clear what you mean, but simply put, the McCarter-English bills related to the work that Attorney Vitarelli did, not Attorney Vitarelli, Attorney Fisher did in reviewing the contract and helping with the presentation last August in terms of explaining what our options were under the contract. If we went forward with the project, what took place. If we didn't go forward with the project, what took place. Those are all kind of helping with that. The Attorney Vitarelli, who spoke to this group and talked about a review of the approval process we used, those were not charged to this project. All right? So Attorney Fisher's work was charged to this project because it had to do with completing the project. Legal advice on the contract, what our options were, and what we needed to go forward. Attorney Vitarelli's work was not charged to the project because that had to do with our town approval process and what we took place there, and that was not what I'll call project specific. Does that help? I would hesitate to speak off the top of my head on that. All right.
Okay,
Check 1, 2.
we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. We're going to item number 4, which is to receive a legal opinion regarding Charter 37-13 of the Town Code as it pertains to representative town meetings' role in the approval of changes or amendments in the Town of Fairfield Employees' Retirement Plan. I'm going to read the legal response from Attorney Lesser. For those of you who, I've sent it to everybody, but if you haven't seen it or read it or received it for some reason, I'm going to read it now. It says, Dear Mr. Steele, I've been asked to provide a legal opinion regarding the method by which the rules and regulations of the Fairfield Pension Board may be amended. Our retirement system is governed by town ordinance, specifically Charter 37 of the Town Code. The section of the code which is pertinent to the question you have asked is 37-13, which provides the Employees Retirement Board is authorized and directed to adopt such rules and regulations not inconsistent with the provisions of this article for the effective operations of the retirement system. Such rules and regulations shall be applicable to all employees of the town as the effective date of this article. Such rules and regulations shall be submitted to the representative town meeting. If not rejected by the representative town meeting within 60 days of submission, such rules and regulations shall be deemed adopted. Such rules and regulations may be amended in the same manner. Any such rules or regulations adopted by the Employees Retirement Board shall be printed and made available to any member of the retirement system on request. It is clear, therefore, that the Retirement Board is the only board authorized to adopt its rules. The RTM has what is essentially veto power over the adoption of the rules, but does not have the right to promulgate rules and regulations of the board. That is the opinion, and what we can do, Attorney Lester is here. If there are any questions or follow-up questions to that, I assume he'll try and answer. If he cannot answer, then we can submit them and get answers to him. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. To give some people, I was one of the ones that asked for that to be put on the agenda. I had received an email from a constituent several weeks ago that asked about the town code and its relevance to the issue. Basically what it's dealing with is...
Representative Bateson, let's speak right here. Let's just come over and do everything right here.
Yeah, thank you. what I was concerned about is when it came to the CFO negotiation, the settlement, the pension bump, where we increased the salary, this constituent had highlighted something from the town code that I thought was interesting. And after we received the opinion from Floyd Dugas, that opinion addressed the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance aspect of it. And then, you know, this constituent had this question about the town code. I thought it was an interesting question. And basically what it had to do with was how we define salary and how it's, you know, how you use that to calculate pension. So I did some research, you know, in the town code and under the Employees Retirement Board, their rules and regulations. I formed my own opinion, and I wanted to hear what Mr. Lesser had to say, so that generated a discussion through Mr. Steele where I had to put it on the agenda. The opinion that you guys received, that we all received, I think, last week, was the result of that. I had some follow-up that I had sent an email back to Jeff that was submitted to Mr. Lesser, I think, today. It's something, food for thought. That's all it is. I'm not encouraging or advocating a course of action at this time. I just think it's something that we as a body should contemplate and understand. I'm not looking to pin Mr. Lesser down on exact, you know, respond to it this evening. I mean, if he needs time, I mean, you know, it took me a couple of days to figure this out and figure out how I was with the situation. I mean, that's what I wanted to let you know, that that's how this came about. I didn't mean to, you know, Representative Stamler came up this evening and started asking me a question. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't mean to open up a debate on the issue this evening. I just want us to all think, you know, hear what Mr. Lesser has to say, come back and realize our responsibilities as a body when it comes to this matter, because I do think there is something that the RTM has to do with this issue. And I would like to hear it, you know, further investigated by Mr. Lesser. Okay, specifically, what I'm seeing in the Employee Retirement Board, when it comes to the rules and regulations, one of the concerns I had was when we retire a person, they go out on a calculation of their salary that, to me, seems to be defined as it has to be paid or earned over a course of time. In the CFO, I saw that amount as around $134,000. If I saw that amount in the agreement, that's fine. When I see the agreement go up, what we call the pension bump to 155, I get concerned because I don't think that that is necessarily reflected in the practices that the Employees Retirement Board uses to calculate pension. So I think what I'm seeing is there's been a change in the way that's done for this agreement, which I don't think is reflected in their rules or regulations or necessarily reflected or agreeing with our code.
I believe that it quite frankly is reflected in the regulations. As I understand it, the pensions in this town are calculated by taking the highest salary that a person earned during the fiscal year, and I think that's 37.1, I think, as Mr. Bateson pointed out in his email. The highest salary that year, you take that number, you multiply it by the number of years of service, and then you multiply that by 2.275% for every year of service. And that's how you get the pension. So, for example, if someone made $100,000 and worked for 20 years, you would take $100,000 times 20 times 2.275%, which would come to about, I think, around $45,000 or $45,500 per year. That's how you arrive at it. The pension board doesn't really do that. That's in the pension board's rules. I think it's kind of a mathematical process that takes place when somebody retires, and we have people retiring every year. Now, I don't think that this board has anything to do with that. The pension board sets that rule. I think there may be times when the pension board itself has to amend its rules. For example, if a union contract was negotiated that called for a different multiplier or something like that, then they'd have to change that. But in answer to Mr. Bateson's question, the answer is no. I mean, it's a fixed thing. So when Mr. Hiller is paid $155,600 on June 30th, 2013, that will be his highest salary for that fiscal year, and that will be the salary that will just simply get plugged into the formula to arrive at his pension. And I think that the pension board doesn't really, they don't amend their rules or anything like that. They just follow their rules, take the salary, take the number of years of service, figure it out, and then that's what the pension is. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. That's a goner. Thank you for that, but what I'm getting at is that maybe my interpretation is too parochial, but I don't think he ever was paid $155,000. I want somebody's earnings when they retire to be based on what they earned, and I think that's the interpretation of when I read stuff in the town code when it says paid, that when somebody's paid, it's based upon what they've earned or their experience in earnings over a period of time, and that was my interpretation when I read all the information. That I don't want us to see us start, picking arbitrary numbers to say that's what you were paid. I think when you get paid, you get paid. That's my hang-up on this specific issue.
I don't have the charter with me, or the code, I didn't bring it, but Mr. Bateson, in your email, you point to section 37.1 of the code, which defines annual base salary as the highest regular salary or wage paid to the member in the town's fiscal year. It's my understanding that Mr. Hiller will be paid $155,600 annual rate for the last day that he's working. So under these rules, that's his highest salary for the fiscal year. That's the way I interpret it. And I think some pensions might say, you get the average of the last 3 years, or the average of the last 2 years, things like that. That's not what this says. It's the highest base salary during that fiscal year. So I think I don't think he has been paid that yet. I agree with you, but I think he will have been paid it during this fiscal year, so therefore his pension will be based on that.
Okay, I'm trying to sway you guys. I'm going to stick with my interpretation. I'm sorry. When we retire people, I want the retirement to be based upon what they actually earned, and that's going to be my definition of paid. Paid is what you received. I'm going to stick with that. I'm sorry, Mr. Lesser, on this one I just disagree. And how that comes to us, or what I feel is that under Section 37-13, I think that's a change in the past, in the accepted practices that we allow the Employees Retirement Board to do under their rules and regulations. In Section 37-13, there's a section in there that says, if you don't reject something or act on it within 60 days, it's effective. I'm kind of thinking that, my opinion is that paid means that you received it. I don't think he's going to receive it, so this is a change. I would like to see that acted upon. I'm sorry, I just disagree with Mr. Lesser on this.
Just to be clear, and just to address what our current practice is, if you go back a couple of years, I think 2009, there were 30 people that were encouraged to take early retirement. And it was structured just this way, that their salary was increased on the last day. All right, and that was over 30 examples of it. If you look at how anybody leaves, if they get a raise on July 1st and they retire on August 31st, they're getting that raise at their highest pay for that point. That is what our current practice is. That's how it's calculated. Certainly looking at a change of that, if it's something that was the concern of this body or any other groups, and it's certainly been a topic of discussion. I mean, in the short term, this has been one of the tools that has been used over time. I would certainly agree not to use it going forward, subject to this body clarifying how they'd like that to work, and subject to the pension board clarifying how they'd like that to work.
You want to go to me? Yeah. I appreciate the history on the matter. Quite frankly, the only reason I'm addressing this now, I never knew about those instances with the retirements. I've never really been involved in this issue or how we retire individuals through an early incentive program. So I'm just commenting on this now because from an RTM's point of view, this is the first time I'm seeing it. That's all. This is the first time I've been advised that a practice such as this occurs. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
Mr. Baston, I don't know if you were here back in 2009, but when that went through, there was much discussion about that. I was on the Board of Finance at the time. It was one of the items we discussed. So it was both very public, very knowledgeable in terms of what was taking place when that early retirement program was offered out and how it was constructed. So we're following the same mechanics, same approach, and same approval process as those cases were followed.
Representative Mottola, did you have something?
John Mottola, District 2. I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Bateson, from this is an issue that maybe we should fix, but I agree with Attorney Lesser's interpretation of what 37-1 states. I think he's correct. It doesn't say you look back over the last year and what their salary may have been or was to figure out what the pension calculation is. It's pretty clear. I think the remedy here is this is a town code, and we can look at it. I'm having an echo here, I think. So that's right. But I understand your concern. But we are obligated to follow the charter and the town code, and it doesn't read the way you're reading it. And I just disagree with you. But I think it's something that, as the first selectman said, we can look into it. Thank you.
Any other member? Representative Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Becker, District 1. Looking on the second page of the settlement agreement, under section number 3, which specifically discusses what will occur at the end of the business day on June 30th, 2013, it notes, halfway through the paragraph, however, that instead of his pension benefit being calculated based upon his salary for the preceding 12 months, solely for the purposes of calculating his pension benefit, his salary shall be deemed to be $155,600 as of his last day of employment. If you look at that, it notes the end of the business day. It specifically works around the 12-month provision and then lays out solely for the purposes of his pension. It doesn't even notate that he'd be paid. Would you like to read this? I can start from the beginning of the paragraph. Effective at the end of the business day on June 30th, 2013 is how that paragraph starts off. Hillary's employment shall terminate. I mean, I don't want to. If there's a component, it's here. You can read it, but there's 3 points.
At the very end.
Well, the question is, what do you think about the 3 points within here that I've notated that I believe negate that he would actually be paid any funds on that day? As I'm looking at it, it appears as though it would be for pension calculating purposes only. It would occur at the end of the business day, and he would not actually receive those funds. It's solely for the purpose of the calculation of that benefit, and it specifically addresses that 12 months calculation won't be occurring. So I'm curious how, with that information, he's still actually going to even receive any funds on that day. lays out that he wouldn't.
I mean, I would say that they would have to be paid for that one day because it says the salary is 155.6 as of his last day of employment. That's the way I interpret it.
Although it doesn't take effect until the end of the business day, and,
Well, it takes effect as of the last day of employment.
okay, well, that's your response. I'm bringing this, you know,
What are
I
the
think
questions?
that, well, I think that we need, I hate to keep ordering up these opinions on everything, but it seems as though, a number, you know, Ed has obviously laid out quite a lot of detail earlier in the day. The opinion that you had released, or, you know, and I understand without that additional background as perhaps why, but it seemed a little bit kind of light on detail there. And I would like to see, I think in writing, a response that addresses the points that Mr. Bateson has. I would actually also like to see that in relation to what I've brought up here. I understand where you're going, but I quite frankly read it quite differently. And I think that what we're consistently finding here is just a never-ending attempt to usurp the authority of the checks and balances as put forth in the town code and in the town charter, and it's concerning. And you know what? If you ultimately, if you really have the right backing on this, fine. But at every single turn, you know, there's something else that keeps coming up, and you've got your view of it, and it seems like quite a number of people have a quite different view on this. And but we're talking about something quite serious, quite expensive for the community.
What do you want?
You know, so
Do you want to request anything? Do you want to
I'm
ask any
requesting
final
the
questions?
opinion at this point. I mean, I'd like possibly, if you would like to delve into what occurred in '07, but the point here is that I think it was '09, excuse me. The point here is that at the time, for whatever reason, you know, the body did not get involved in that, but here we are, okay? And just because something was done a certain way in the past, for whatever reason, does not mean that that's how it needs to be done now. In fact, that is, I think, how we have gotten ourselves into past practice type issues in the past, and that, well, the body just did it. Well, we found, I mean, we just had a presentation from the Metro Center. We have found that this body and you know, has been left out on a number of things. We have found that the town, the administration, not necessarily yours, obviously you were, you know, the previous administration, but there are a number of times that, you know, bypassing boards has occurred, or boards passing over on their authority has occurred, and I don't think it's for the better. So it's a problem, and I'm asking for more detail. You have a very lengthy email from Mr. Bateson. I appreciate you being here tonight. I know it wasn't, you know, it was obviously a little bit difficult to make that happen, but I think we need more with this. And
So can I, yeah, go ahead, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, just to be clear, this contract was written with Attorney Dugas helping out at each step of the way. It's been reviewed by Attorney Lesser. We can spend the money to have him write it up, but he's just told us what the interpretation is. Attorney Dugas agreed with that. Some of this was written specifically by, or worded by Mr. Hillis' attorney to make sure he was protected through that, but he's getting paid that on the last day. That's what it is. That's how it worked in 2009. And that's the current practice, and that's what we followed here. Certainly understand the concerns, and certainly understand that if we want to clarify the interpretation, so whether it agrees with Mr. Bateson or not, that it's clear enough so Mr. Bateson's comfortable with it and the rest of this body is, that's fine. But I think that we have spent money for the first attorney to help do it. We've certainly asked Mr. Lesser to be here tonight at his rate. We can certainly continue to spend money on attorneys, but I'm not sure that when we're done, everybody will necessarily 100% agree. I'm not sure this body has voted 100% on much outside of consent calendars, which don't always come up. So from that standpoint, if you want Mr. Lesser to put that in writing, we certainly can.
Well, unfortunately, the reason that we keep spending money are the decisions that come out of your administration. An at-will employee... Oh, no. And, no, this is an...
We're going to end this.
No, this is an at-will employee. This is an at-will employee that left. This is a situation where we have now been buried in legal costs, pension costs. It's a real...
Okay. All right, okay.
No, it is.
We're going to move on. Ed, did you have a final comment?
I'm sorry, I would like it in writing from Mr. Lesser. I don't necessarily see... That's fine. If you want to, if we talk about it personally, I don't have a problem with that. It's just, you know, I think the body needs to be informed of what we discuss, if you don't mind, afterwards. If I jot something down and send it out to Jeff and have it go. I mean, I don't mind talking to attorneys, but being on this body, I'd like them to know how I feel, and you know, in hearing what you say if we have a private discussion.
I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to make sure that I have the question correct. And it's my understanding, Mr. Bateson, that your concern is that a person should only get a pension based on how much he earns in that fiscal year, the last fiscal year?
Not necessarily. It should be what they actually receive monetarily, what they've earned.
For what period, though? See, let me just say, that's why it's written like that. It doesn't say what the person's earned. It says his highest salary for the fiscal year. That's what the pension is based on. If what you're saying is true, quite frankly, if you have someone that retired, let's say on December 31st, 6 months into the fiscal year, if what you're saying is true, then his pension would only be based on 6 months of pay. That's why it's written that you get the highest salary for that fiscal year. And I mean, that's quite frankly what I'd be telling you, so.
Okay. I see where you're going. I see where you're going with that. I would go more along the lines of the CFO never earned the $155,000. He wouldn't have. I don't have a problem with the 134, the original amount that he was earning. That's what I'm trying to get at. I don't want to argue dates or semantics about that. That's what I'm having a problem with. We just can't say that's what you earn. There has to be a history attached to that, and I think that's something we delegate to the Employees Retirement Board in these. There's an employee's handbook. It has highest annual salary. It's defined. I mean, when these people retire, they have to go through human resources where it's documented what they've earned.
But not the pension board. The pension board just plugs in the number, or whoever plugs in the number. Not even be the board.
But there has to be something there that would match the rationale that what you've earned or what you've received on your paycheck is going to match what your pension calculation is. That's what I consider paid. The 155 is not paid, never will be paid. So I disagree. I'll go with Mr. Becker. That's not what it says in the agreement.
We're not going to solve this problem right now, and I want to move on because there's been suggestions for looking at this and maybe changing it so that it's clearer, and I think we all agree on that. Representative Mottola mentioned that, Representative Bateson. Maybe there are things we can do to look at this and change it, but we're not going to battle it out right here. I'm glad the issue was brought out, and I think that's important. Some questions were asked. Maybe not all the answers were given or satisfactory to people, but we need to move on. In doing so, we're going to go to item number 5, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. And I will say one other thing. If people do have questions on that last issue, you can continue to forward them to me. It's not like questions are stopping. Like, we can't continue the discussion. We can't keep asking for further information. You can certainly all do that. You can send it to me. I'll get it to Mr. Tetreault and Mr. Lesser, and we can continue talking. I don't know if right now is the exact time to continue that, because it doesn't sound like everyone has the same opinions or answers, and it's just going to be a battle right here. So, anyways, item number 5, resolve that an increase in the estimated revenue for federal grants in the amount of $5,000 be made to cover the cost of Fairfield's continued efforts to further develop the Fairfield Easton Medical Reserve Corps, FEMRC, and to promote the integration of the MRC unit into the local public health and emergency response system. And further resolved that the First Selectman is authorized to make, execute, and approve on behalf of the town of Fairfield any and all contracts or amendments thereof with the National Association of County and City Health Officials, NACCHO, to conduct activities described in the NACCHO MRC Capacity Building Award with an anticipated contract period of September 15, 2012 to September 15, 2013. These costs are 100% reimbursable. This item was referred to all standing committees. May I have a motion to approve? Representative McCullough, a second. Representative Schwartz. Quickly going over committee votes, L&A, there were 6 members present. Representative Braun, Brogan, DiMartino, and Varian were absent. The vote was all 6 in favor. Finance, 8 members were present. Representatives McKenzie and Jacob were absent. Vote was all 8 in favor. Public Works and Planning, no quorum and no vote. Public Health and Safety, 7 members were present. Representatives Hug, Matt Ambrose, and Hurley were absent. Vote was all 7 in favor. In Education and Recreation, 7 members were present. Representatives Mirabili, Marks, and Patton were absent. Vote was all 7 in favor. Now have discussion on this item among the body. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion among the public? Comments among the public? Seeing none, we'll now have a vote. All those in favor of item number 5, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item number 6, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolve that there, yes. Representative McCullough, a second on waiving the reading. Representative Dean, all those in favor of waiving the reading? All those opposed? Representative Hurley, Representative Garskoff would like me to read it. Abstentions? Okay. This item is referred to all standing committees. May I have a motion to approve item number 6? Representative Smay, a second. Representative Ferentz. I'll now go over committee votes. Actually, just summarizing, this was unanimous by all committees. Again, Public Works Planning had no quorum, so it did not go on consent. We're now going to have discussion among the body. Comments from the public. Now go to a vote on item number 6. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item number 6 passes. Item number 7. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution. Second, Schwartz and Dean. All those in favor say aye of waiving the reading. Opposed? Hurley, Representative Garskoff. Abstentions? So we are now moving to item number 7, referred to all standing committees again. May I have a motion to approve? Representative Hug, a second. Representative Dean. Committee votes. L&A, vote was 3 in favor and 3 abstentions. Representatives Bateson, Becker, and Steele abstained. Finance, vote was all 8 in favor. Public Works and Planning, no quorum. Public Health and Safety, vote was 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Representatives D'Amica and Pontrelli. Education and Recreation, vote was all 7 in favor. We'll now have discussion among the body on item number 7. Representative McCullough. By the way, I sent out, and apparently only some people were able to receive them, 2 maps sent by, I think, the Bike Association or Coalition that had maps of the bike trails, and I think there are a couple floating around if you don't have them, but I sent them by email. Some people got them, some people didn't. They're in my sent items. They were definitely attached. I don't know if everyone was able to download them. I see Representative Ryan has one here if people want to look at them. Anyways, Representative McCullough.
I asked at a committee meeting if I could receive a list of any other streets that met the requirements for a bike trail, and I did not receive that information. Does anybody have an answer to my question?
Do you want to? Yeah, and Sans Claire here is also here. In case.
Is there a representative from the Bike Walk Coalition here? Mr. Moderator, if you might speak. The Bike Walk Coalition has been working on a plan for improving bike walk pathways in town for about 2 years. If you could come up to the podium.
Come up here. don't you answer the question and read yourself?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Andrew Graceffa, and I'm the chair of the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Yes, yes. I was just introducing myself. I haven't spoken for the RTM before. The chair of the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Advisory Committee. And to answer your question, Bill Hurley is also here from the Town Engineering Department. There are other routes that have been examined through GIS data, other roads that have been examined as applicable routes through town. Those have been primarily designated on the overall town map. So Hoydens Hill Road, a shore route, which consists of the majority of the Old Post Road, a road in the Stratfield area, Park Avenue, and other roads through town. The reason that Mill Plain was selected for an application for this grant is that it fit numerous characteristics, and it connected multiple entities within town. So there are other roads. We just selected Mill Plain Road through work with the Department of Engineering and the Health Department through their recommendations as well. Does that answer your question?
To a certain degree.
Okay.
Why did you choose one over the other?
Well, I'm not sure if engineering perspective, Mill Plain Road was already being resurfaced at this time. So if we apply the street markings and the signage, we have the greatest chance of longevity for the markings. We're not going to have to be subject to planing the road down 2 or 3 years from now and having to remark it. So Mill Plain came up, was already being resurfaced, and so it offered the opportunity on the engineering side for cost effectiveness to just stripe it while we're at it. Okay.
Are the stripings on the west side of the road, east side of the road, or both sides of the road?
The striping is going to be on both sides of the road. Bicyclists need.
You should come down.
No parking signs going to be removed from Mill Plain Road?
Mary, come down for 1 hour.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Bill Hurley from the Engineering Department, the engineering manager, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so my questions are, both sides of the road are going to be marked, so thank you for that. Number two, there are some faded old no parking signs on Mill Plain Road, which I happened to stop and look at today as I came down the road again. And are they going to be removed? And do the residents that live on Mill Plain Road realize that this is going to be done? And did we get any feedback from them?
One of the reasons why we chose to do a bike route as opposed to a bike path is that parking would still be permitted. Right now, the proposal that's in front of the RTM is to basically paint white shoulder lines with the possible expansion of going into a bike route with additional signs. Right now, these white shoulder lines exist on Park Avenue. They exist on Barlow Road. They exist on 2 or 3 other streets in town and most of the state roads. So the bike route, and trying not to be controversial and eliminating parking, we decided to just do the white shoulder lines. There will be no elimination of parking. If the signs are faded, DPW has a GIS system and a periodic maintenance staff that goes around. We typically do that during the winter months, so we'll have someone go out, and any of the faded signs we would eventually replace. If you have particular ones in mind, send me or DPW an email, and we'll make sure they get on the list. Yes, of course. Thanks.
I think part of our question was, if you've looked at a lot of different roads, why you decide on this road?
Okay. Well, basically, we based the road on several items, and as Andy alluded to, Mill Plain Road and, say, like a Fairfield Woods Road would be pretty natural to do. It would just involve pavement markings and some signs. We've had in the past, and with the police commission, there's even been 2 requests to do Tamor Drive, or Tamor Drive. Tamor Drive is about 30, 35 feet wide and for 3/4 of the road. But as you get close to the Black Rock Turnpike, it's only like 28 feet, which is too narrow for a bike lane or even a buffer lane or shoulder area. So we would have to actually widen that road to make it conform to a typical bike route or standard road. So that's the reason why we didn't take a road like that, is it would actually cost capital improvement to do. With Mill Plain Road, it's already there. Another reason with Mill Plain Road is you have the park, Sturgis Park. You have two or three schools nearby. You have one of the most popular bike and pedestrian areas along Brookside Drive and the Mill River. So there, and then also you have near the train station and the highway, underpass there into to the center of town that way as well. So in terms of demand, based on engineering and constructability, and also the fact of last year there was a bike and pedestrian forum where the public was invited to speak. When we have a typical one that the DOT or the Greater Bridgeport Regional Planning puts on, you get maybe 5 or 10 people show up. In this particular case, there were over 100 people who spent 3 hours, and I have a whole list, if you wanted to see it, of all the roads that they wanted sidewalks and bike paths and bike routes on. So it was really judged on that this would probably be what we would deem as the most useful, and would be an excellent example for a pilot program. If we painted these lines and it didn't work out, well, the lines just go and get faded away. As a matter of fact, on Cornell Road, there was white shoulder lines, and over the last couple of years, they faded away. Right now, we have not put them back yet. Of course, the bridge is being constructed, so that's maybe another reason why we haven't done it recently. But the lines just fade away. If there's a heavy demand or developed, there's a support for it, and there's a lot of usage for it, well then, yes, we would have to periodically repaint.
This one, right here.
My last question is that this grant is to cover the cost of cardiovascular disease prevention program focusing on policy and environmental change for citizens served by the Fairfield Health Department. What citizens in the town of Fairfield are not served or potentially are excluded from being served by this?
Yeah, no, that'll be some.
The question being, what residents are excluded from, yes, would essentially be those who don't desire to ride a bike down Mill Plain Road, I would assume would be the most concise answer. Our programs focus on specific segments of the population year in and year out. We have programs, last year's was for folks with a diagnosis of prediabetes. That excluded a lot of people. If you didn't have that diagnosis, you didn't really qualify for the program that we offered. So we think this, in a sense, will have a broader scope than programs that we have offered in the past, and we hope that, similar to ball fields and soccer fields and skate parks and the wonderful things we build in this town that bring lots of athletic activity to those areas, we think the research supports that this will generate increased activity and will lead to healthier, active lifestyles.
Okay.
The other thing is, my understanding is that the state has already approved this use for funding, so the project has been approved by the state. So I just wanted to make that.
I have actually a follow-up question to Mary's, and we alluded to it at committee. And my question is, $15,000 was the grant, and I'm not, again, questioning the end goal or end result, but were other items looked at, and was this the only way to spend the money that was considered, or were there others that were kind of put down or made second or third choices? Was this the top choice of many, and what were some of the others?
Let's have Sarah Levy address that.
Please.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Levy. I'm the public health educator from the Fairfield Health Department. These are the program options that can be used for that money. Cancer, including comprehensive cancer planning and skin cancer. Cardiovascular disease prevention, diabetes, high blood pressure, smoking cessation, cholesterol, and policy environmental change for chronic disease prevention, which is what the grant before you is about. Injury prevention, surveillance, including childhood lead poisoning surveillance and risk factor surveillance, healthy homes, tools for schools, and chronic disease self-management programs. When we plan these programs, we look at multiple factors. We've been focusing on cardiovascular disease prevention for at least the last 10 years, and previous to that, a year or two at a time. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, in Connecticut, and in Fairfield. And as such, we have focused on reducing risk factors that lead to cardiovascular disease. We've been doing that for 10 years, and this year the state shifted their criteria for this grant following the federal criteria and mission, and that is to switch from a more programmatic approach to reducing disease, where you're working with 15 or 20 people at a time, to more of an environmental approach, so that you are potentially reaching a much larger group of people at a time, such as parents, children, people that wish to commute without engaging in motorized traffic. This grant was approved before I even wrote the application by the State Department of Health Division of Chronic Disease Prevention. This is what they are urging people to do. It's brand new this year. I wish we could do both, environmental change and a programmatic, continuing our pre-diabetes program. And in fact, we're actively looking for funding to be able to continue that program because it is very important.
I want to clarify my question.
Sure.
What other options in the environmental? Was this it? So we had the money. Was it just painting lines down the side of the street for this, or were there other infrastructure or environmental related programs we could have put that money? Was this it?
Oh, I
Do
see.
what I'm saying?
You just wanted
I mean,
to know about the
that explanation
environmental?
was helpful, but was there a pool of options and you chose this one?
Yes.
What are
And
two
that
of the
is-
other
what?
options? What were a couple of the other options?
Policy change. The options included either healthy eating or active living. This fit well into active living. Let's see, some of the examples that were provided were things like things that are being actively carried out in the school system, instead of trying to change kids' behavior and eating, say, cookies, that we're changing the kind of food that is served in the school cafeteria. That's an environmental change.
So that was an option of something where the money could have been put towards.
Yes.
But that was chosen as not the final use of the money.
Because there's so much effort and the school's already going towards
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Could I
Yeah, no,
add
just
two
take
more
a minute.
sentences?
Yeah.
This actually builds on both the 10 years of work that we've done in this area and the ongoing work of the Bike Walk Advisory Committee, and there are many members here tonight to speak, and the Bike Walk Coalition. So having all of these professional, very involved and engaged volunteer committees actually makes a small amount of money go a long way The striping and the signs and the stenciling is just a small part. I mean, that's the infrastructure change. But this grant requires ongoing evaluation, close work with the State Department of Public Health, involving people from communities such as McKinley and populations that are often underserved. There's a lot to it beyond just the striping and the signs. That's just what we're using the money for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Meyer.
Gaylord Meyer, District 1. I just was looking at this map, and I just want to be clear here. This map shows that you're coming down Mill Hill, but in fact, it looks like it's North Pine Creek that goes underneath that railroad track. Because if just the way I'm looking at this map, you jot.
Yeah, that's one of the alternates that were being proposed. This, as Sarah alluded to, this is part of a bike and pedestrian improvement plan, and this was the one that they had just used from this. But we would go on Mill Plain Road for this.
Well,
grant.
I guess my second question would be, does that meet the requirement for width? Because again, North Pine as well as Mill Hill are both very, very narrow when you come underneath those railroad tracks. So you have the sidewalks, and then next to the sidewalks you would have the bike.
Well, in that particular case, you would have what they call SHAROs, which is share the road. And same thing if you have go through a busy intersection, you would have to be treated like a motor vehicle, and you'd go through it in the lane of the car.
Oh, God help us.
That's the way it's done.
Have you looked? Okay.
However, where if you can travel a bike that if it's like for children, they can go on the sidewalk if they go about the speed of a pedestrian, a walker. So for the children, and again, this is just an example. For this grant, we're doing Mill Plain Road. This was one that they wanted to just show some of the, because someone, I guess, brought up, are there other areas? And so that's why they were bringing that one. But you're absolutely right. North Pine Creek would only be used as an alternate. I would not do a bike lane or a bike route on North Pine Creek without doing other.
No, I just, and one quick question also is that after we have put this or implemented this plan, and the state decides not to continue, who is responsible and how much would it cost the taxpayer in the town?
Well, again, the town would make that choice on whether it would be a DPW line, in the budget of, just like they paint crosswalks and just as they paint other, yellow lines in the town, it would be part of that in their regular budget if they decided to continue. If they decided not to, the lines just fade and life goes on as if it had never happened.
Thank you.
Any other members? Yes. Representative Marks.
Representative Marks, District 8. This summer I started to do some serious biking around the area, and I found that if there were bike paths and bike lanes, it would make life a lot easier for people who want to get out there and do some exercise. I think anytime we can do anything to encourage people to get outside, do some exercise, especially the kids in town, we should do that. So I strongly encourage you to vote for this. Thank you.
Any other members? Members of the public? And then you can come on up if you want to.
Good evening again. My name is Andrew Graceffa, and I'm, again, the chair of the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan Advisory Committee. Also a father of 3 girls, and also the president of the Fairfield Bike Walk Coalition, which is a citizen advocacy group. The Fairfield Bike Plan Advisory Committee was formed approximately 2 years ago by the Board of Selectmen, consisting of 9 residents, and has been charged to work with the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council and all applicable town departments to develop a Fairfield bicycle and pedestrian master plan. The plan also integrates survey responses from over 750 residents, as well as a public charrette. Our plan's vision statement reads, "The town of Fairfield recognizes the need to encourage walking and bicycle travel for transportation, recreation, exercise, and quality of life. Walking and biking use conserves energy, improves air quality, reduces traffic and the need for parking, improves health and fitness, and improves the local economy through a better quality of life, increased access to local businesses, and greater potential for tourism in the area. These goals will be achieved through education, encouragement, enforcement, and infrastructure." Three last points. During the public survey and charrette periods, notable sentiments were revealed. Number one, the top concern of the respondents was safety, with over 42 responses indicating such. The second, the top suggested improvement, with over 39 responses, was implementing bike routes or lanes. And number three, Mill Plain was indicated as one of the most preferred routes through town. As noted above, the plan stresses a cohesive approach through education, enforcement, encouragement, and infrastructure. The item on the agenda tonight is just one piece of the infrastructure section, and using the grant funding to implement the Mill Plain Road bike route will, amongst other things, fulfill the mission of funding the funding grant, improving the health and wellness of the local population. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you can sit. I'm sorry. Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Charles Case. I'm the president of the Mill Plain Improvement Society, which represents about 400 families in the lower Mill Plain, Riverhurst, and Perry Pond area. I've lived at 50 Dunlea Road, my wife and I, raised 4 children, now adults, in the town for the past 34 years. The one beauty of coming to Fairfield, our house is located in a cul-de-sac, and as many of you know, in the street design system of Fairfield, it enabled our children to learn to ride their bikes to begin with. But as our family grew, so did the town, and so also did the amount of cars now on our streets. Biking from our various neighborhoods and using the shared main roads to the parks, beaches, train stations, and shopping areas would put less cars on the roads and make for a healthier family lifestyle. Mill Plain Road is a wide enough road to mark the sides for bicycling. It has all the criteria and achieves the following. Side markings slows the speed on Mill Plain Road just by the eyesight of creating a narrower field of view for the driver. It encourages more bicycling instead of the car trips to town center, and it's also healthier for all and enables families to join in a bike trip to park, schools, and town center. In our Mill Plain neighborhood, the installation of sidewalks, thanks to also a grant by the state, which took about 7 years, and Bill Hurley so aptly helped in situations where the sidewalks had to be made a little bit narrower. It's made for safer walking, totally encouraging more families to walk. More children are walking to the 3 close-together schools and parks. New mothers are pushing baby carriages and meeting their neighbors more easily, therefore enjoying the outside. Bicycling will have a similar effect in our neighborhood. The positives of designated Mill Plain Road as a bike route far outweigh any negatives. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Katina Wolf, Co-Secretary of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'm here to offer my support for the implementation of the Mill Plain Bike Route. Along with significantly upgrading the walkability of the town, the proposed plan will recommend a town-wide network of bike routes, such as the portion that's under consideration tonight, and share the road routes. The Mill Plain Road Bike Route has many positive attributes. First, in its general ease and cost of implementation, the work is being done in conjunction with the Mill Plain resurfacing and will not require any road widening or substantial infrastructure modification. 2, enhancing the safety of the neighborhood for residents and users by raising driver awareness of bicyclists, and slightly slowing traffic. The bike route will integrate a shoulder stripe, on-road sharrows, and signage, thereby creating Fairfield's first marked bike route. Third, close proximity to nearby schools, parks, and the downtown area. Children will have better and safer access to multiple schools, university students will have easier access, and the public will have a route connecting many parks to the downtown core. Access to healthier activities becomes much easier. These last 2 points are especially critical in our dynamic town. As a longtime resident, a mother of 3, and a frequent bicyclist and runner, the health and safety of our town residents is of personal significance to me. Over the last 18 years that I have lived here in the town, it has become more health conscious, with the addition and improvement of town soccer and baseball fields, healthier meals in the schools, promoting walk-to-school days, building playgrounds, and even a town gym. We are a very young, vibrant town, and with many recreational facilities such as town beaches, a lake, walking and hiking trails in the town preserved open spaces, playgrounds, sports fields. It seems only logical that the town would add bike routes to encourage another means of recreational and physical fitness. Fairfield has always been environmentally conscious, and instituting bike routes encourages our community to become even more green by promoting and supporting bike riding. Additionally, designating bike routes naturally forces drivers to slow down, making the roads safer for all residents. With safer roads, more adults and children will bike more frequently around town to work or school, or just for the fun of it. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jack Franzen, Vice Chair of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'm here to offer my support for the implementation of the Mill Plain Bike Route. I live at 2760 Congress Street, and I've been in Fairfield for 30-plus years. Presently, I have 2 business locations in town for my architecture practice, one in Southport and one in the Brick Walk. And I've always had an interest in infrastructure here in Connecticut, specifically in Fairfield, just because of the way it has impact on me and my employees and the way we schedule meetings and client visits, etc. But also in terms of quality of life. I've actually ridden both of those routes to the Post Road, both going right down to Starbucks and cutting through Pine Creek. And I also sometimes cut through by Fairfield U. On weekends, it's not uncommon to see me blasting down Burr Street onto Mill Plain to get to work. And some of my employees who reside in Fairfield also do the same thing. It's a great way for me to squeeze in some recreation and exercise and get some extra work done that can't keep until Monday, which seems more and more the case. I'm also seeing at morning and evening hours some hardcore commuters who are riding bikes up and down Mill Plain, more than I've seen in the past 10 years. So I think there is undeniable economic benefit in enhancing bike and pedestrian infrastructure in a way that encourages home-to-job alternatives to driving. Purely in terms of lifestyle, I think it's also very important to consider the recreational potential for these types of enhancements. Since Fairfield's beaches and many of its athletic facilities are in the southern part of town, having an option of biking to these from the northern parts of town makes sense, not to mention relieving parking demands. Mill Plain Road is a great opportunity to pilot this type of enhancement. The road is relatively wide and straight with minimal portions. In my experience, there really aren't many people who park on the street, and at night there are almost none. Also, this is the way to the beach, it's the way to the railroad station, and the schools for a huge chunk of the population in town. Without committing to a whole program, we'll see if it's popular and whether, as I suspect, it will be resulting in increased use and less driving. And I wasn't planning on sharing this, but my doctor's pretty happy with my continued biking around Fairfield. Also, I think it's worth noting Mill Plain is a cut-through for a lot of people who don't live in town, and they put a lot of pressure on us, especially on weekdays, because people are in a tremendous rush to get down to I-95. And having that stripe, there's science behind it. It will make a difference and slow people down. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? We'll come back to the body. Any other members of the body? Representative McCarthy.
I'll make no plug for cycling at this time. However, what I would like to emphasize is a lot of bright and talented people spent a lot of time the last year and a half looking hard and long at this particular program and determining the best routes and the best use of the money. And I can tell you for sure that I believe this is a worthwhile program, and I think we all are going to get behind this. So enough said.
Any other members? Okay, we're going to go to a vote on this item, number 7. All those in favor of item number 7, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Representative McCullough, Representative Steele. The item passes. We move to item number 8, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution. Waive the reading. Representative McCullough, a second. Representative Schwartz. Referred to all standing committees. Everyone voted on this unanimously except for the Public Works and Planning Committee. Discussion among the body. Item number 8. The public? Okay, we're now going to have a vote on item number 8. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I'm already rushing in the next one. All those opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. We then go to item number 9. Moderators refer to amendments to the tax relief for the elderly ordinance, section 95-7 to section 95-15.4 of chapter 95, article 3 of the Code of the Town of Fairfield, sponsored by the Senior Tax Relief Ordinance Committee, to the L&A Committee under Rule 32 of the RTM rules to regulate. Copy of the proposed ordinance is attached. This item was referred to L&A for review of form, not substance. The item will come back to the full body and be referred to all standing committees at next month's meeting. Item number 10, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting in which may be properly acted upon under the rules of representative town meeting. Representative Sundman asked for 20 seconds for announcement. And as he's doing that, the next meeting will be held on November 26th here. And as he's doing this, I hope everyone has a safe and fun Halloween next week, a smooth election day on November 6th, and since Thanksgiving will take place before the next meeting, a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Representative Sundman.
Thank you for your indulgence. I just wanted to make an announcement that the Department of Public Works is going to be having an open house and tour, inviting the RTM and the public on November 10th on Saturday. We'll send out more details shortly on it, but we'll be doing all the really good things down there, just exploring the inner workings of the Public Works and the recycling and the water treatment plant. So stay tuned on that. Thank you.
You got it. Motion to adjourn. Representative Garskoff, a second. Representative Dean. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Is that Representative Sundman abstention? Yes. Thank you.